Is Bass and Major League Fishing and other organizations looking at limiting the amount of transducers on everyone's boat? Will this satisfy the hardcore anglers that just don't like the technology of forward-facing sonar? Is there any happy medium for the people who like the technology and don't like the technology? That's what we're going to talk about right now. So in the recent days, there's been many veteran anglers that have come out and said forward-facing sonar and the amount of transducers and stuff is limiting their fishing potential. And of course, we know Randy is on the non-forward-facing sonar bandwagon, and rightfully so in his opinion. He's right to that opinion. But are the organizations, Bass, Major League Fishing, looking at limiting or doing something about it in the near future? So right off the bat, nothing will happen this year. If anything will happen, it will happen next year. But there are rumblings in the industry and around that there might be a limit of transducers that are allowed on everyone's boat. But I'm not really sure this will satisfy the hardcore anglers. And what does this mean for the amount of money that the Garmins and the other people that create or have these live scopes? How is it going to affect their income to these major organizations? Because the organizations are meant to make money. Bass and Major League Fishing and all of them. They're there to make money. Does it happen all the time? No. There was a time years ago before Major League Fishing purchased FLW that FLW was in the hole. It's tough to run a competitive fishing circuit, stream it, broadcast it, do television, do all of it, and then still keep it profitable. And we all can agree, watching guys stare down at their video screen scoping is no fun for us fans. But in my opinion, I don't know where we can go and make this good for everybody, because just in some recent videos, we start talking about how they're not using forward-facing sonar in the TAA, and instantly it's, well, everybody is catching bass on beds. And that gets a little tiresome too. You're either for forward-facing sonar or against it. But we've had these fishing tournaments for, I don't even know how many years bass has been around. A lot. And they catch bedding fish. But does that hurt the future of our bass population as much as forward-facing sonar? Taking a bass off a bed could have lots of repercussions for the future of that bass or that spawning bass. But is scoping a fish that's also in deeper water, trying to get away from everything, is that as bad as fishing a bedding bass? There really is no up and down. Everybody has their opinion, which everybody's entitled to. And recently there's been many veteran anglers that have come out against forward-facing sonar because it compromises the success they can have in the future. It isn't just learning forward-facing sonar and putting it into your repertoire of how you fish. There's a reason why you learn how to fish early, and that you use that success or the way you've learned and been taught, that you can bring it through your career. And forward-facing sonar shrinks the lake when you go fishing. It's really what it does better than anything. Doesn't mean you catch more fish or that it's hurting this or hurting that. It shrinks the lake for new people. There was a time when you would go around on the elites and you would know there were certain anglers that would do better at certain places because they knew that part of the country or that lake or pond or whatever it was, really lake. And there was something to be said to have that knowledge of when the temperature is different, what the fish will do, or how the fish reacts to colder or warmer weather, or where the pattern of bass go. With forward-facing sonar, we don't need that anymore. That is it's a narrow area. And we're also finding out that fish move offshore to do their thing, to get away from pressure, to eat, to do everything that we never had the capability of catching and going after. Forward-facing sonar does that. And really, as much as it hurts to say this, the only way this is going to really change is if Bass and Major League Fishing see a ratings or less people watching their television show or watching online. And while this isn't official, I can only go back and look at TV ratings so much because it is a little bit of a challenge. But in this year's Classic on Sunday, probably 100,000 people less watched the Classic. If I look at just ratings for Fox Sports 1, at the Classic in the 2023, it was watched by 538,000 people, and it had a 0.17 rating. That was on Sunday, March 26th. I don't want to go through all the other 3 days, but Bass said over the other 3 days they had 4.5 million views. Now that could be online, that could be FS1, it could be all sorts of stuff. This year for the 2024 Classic, it had 417,000 people watch on FS1. Now again, both those are FS1 ratings. 2023, 538,000. 2024, 417,000 on a Sunday. Now, again, veterans like Mark Menendez and Hank Cherry and Todd Castledine, Hank Parker, and Gerald Swindle, and even Mike Iaconelli didn't really come out, but they have some issues with forward-facing sonar because young anglers are able to use it and keep up with them. And while I can see their side, I can also see the side of the forward-facing sonar anglers. You want to get new blood into the whole Bassmaster Elites. It doesn't need to be the good old boy group. But I can also say that watching forward-facing sonar live on TV is excruciating pain and boring. Whereas in the past, as an angler was twitching a jerkbait or running a crankbait or doing a chatterbait or doing something that was active and you could watch them, they would talk to you a little bit more. When they're fishing and then staring down and looking at a screen, to do two things is tough for most people. For me, it is even on here. Sometimes I make lots of mistakes. But to talk, to look at this monitor, you can see, I'm looking at it right now, and then also have notes, to do 2 or 3 things at one time is tough. When forward-facing sonar comes into play, they're fishing and they're looking down. That's 2 things, multitasking. Now, when they have to talk at the same time while they're looking and casting and doing all that, it isn't fun and it doesn't happen. There's very few of them that can do all of it at the same time. Where in the past, an angler would be casting a crankbait or a jerkbait or whatever it was, power fishing or worm fishing. They weren't focused on a screen below them. They were just focused on fishing so they could talk. And that is where I don't like the new style of fishing. Now, I've said it 100 times. If I was a professional fisherman, I would know everything I could about forward-facing sonar. But at this point in time, I'm not ever going to be a pro. So is it going to take for the big organizations to make a change in how many transducers are allowed on every boat? It all comes down to that viewership. And unfortunately, we all love watching fishing. We might not all love watching fishing with forward-facing sonar, but we all love watching fishing. But that is the key to either the success of forward-facing sonar or making some changes in the big organizations. Will that satisfy the hardcore anglers? I don't know. I think, again, there has to be some way to either have it or limit it or make it so you can't use it so much during the tournament. There has to be something that goes on to make a change. And I don't know where that is. And I don't want to be part of that change. Is there going to be a pro forward-facing sonar and a con pro forward-facing sonar in between middle area that we can all agree on? Probably not, because when one group thinks that forward-facing sonar is the death of fishing, there's still some of those that say we shouldn't go bed fishing and do stuff like that. And maybe tournaments need to look at when they're fishing and when they should be at those places so that we're not fishing for bed fish. I do agree with that a little bit. But at the same time, we all want to see big fish come across the stage, because one year, the first year of Major League Fishing, they took across those 1-pounders. And how many people said MLF stand for more little fish? That's really what was happening. So while the fans want to see the big fish and want to see the numbers and all of that, we still want to make sure that we have to make sure that we're conservation oriented, because the future of the success is not only with the kids fishing, but making sure we have healthy populations of fish in those areas that we love to go to. So I don't know if this helps or hurts. It's just an opinion. But I can honestly say, after last week and all the things that happened and people texting me and anglers calling me and so forth, one of the things I constantly asked while they were telling me their side of what was happening and with how they felt was, what's going on with forward-facing sonar? And most of them said it really comes down to how many views or what the viewership is for each organization, and then moving on from there. At the same time, they also kind of agree that it really comes down to a lot of money that these businesses put into the organization. So we'll see what's going to happen, and only time will tell. So if you like this kind of content, hit that like and subscribe button. I really do appreciate it. Remember, take a kid fishing, get your fish on. I'll talk to you very, very soon. Cheers.